Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we're going over my top 5 battleships. This is a bit of an update video to a video that's been out for, I think over 2 years now, and it's been time to update this list for 2022. So, of course, these 5 ships, in my opinion, would do very well in 2022, and they're worth either the grind to get them the tech line, the resources needed to get them, or the money needed to buy them if they are a premium ship. Another thing too, I was trying to diversify this list quite a bit. I didn't want to just go through the top 5 most popular tier 10s. That's very easy to do. There's so many battleships in the game now. I wanted to not just, of course, be, again, a bunch of tier 10s, so I try to pick from a variety of tech line, premium, resource ship, free XP ships, and such, so that we would have a nice, diverse list here. And again, this is all my opinion, and of course, too, there's many a good battleship in the game. It was very hard to narrow it down to just 5. But these are 5 battleships that are definitely worth the grind, the resources, the money to get, and will do you well in 2022 in World of Warships. So let's go ahead and get on into the list, starting out at number 5, which is the Tier 7 German battleship, the Gneisenau. Now, if you haven't played the game in quite some time, you might be thinking, Gneisenau? What? That ship's terrible. She is not anymore, since quite a few buffs that have been handed out to German battleships over the past couple of years, like we were talking about in last week's video. We were talking about the how the line has been saved by this identity shift that the line has gone through. This is actually a pretty darn good Tier 7 now. So the first and biggest improvement to the Gneisenau was when they replaced the German battleship dispersion, not dispersion, no, yeah, it is dispersion, dispersion ellipse with the American battleship dispersion ellipse, which is a much more consistent ellipse in very short terms, which means that the 2018 days of Gneisenau bracketing a ship at 4 kilometers are no more. As you can see in the gameplay in the background, the shells are much more consistent. Like, it actually hits what you're shooting at now at most ranges. What? You go back to, again, 2018, you could shove the barrels down the rudder of a ship that was in front of you and they'd still miss. But nope, no more. The shells are nice and consistent. The dispersion is infinitely better. Now, this is with a main battery tank built on the Gneisenau. So I think about the Gneisenau, she has excellent armor, excellent speed, torpedoes, excellent secondaries. I'm amazed that this ship is at Tier 7 still, and they haven't done anything to it but buff it in recent years, which is a good thing. Don't change it, Wargame. You know what, Wargame? Actually, it's a terrible ship. It needs some more buffs. So, but you can build this thing for main battery tank now, and it works so well. She's very tanky. She has one of the thickest broadside armor in the game, so especially with a ship that can go 32 knots at Tier 7. This is maneuverable as the Gneisenau. That has the 15-inch guns. Keep in mind, this is a Tier 7 with 15-inch guns, which means you can overmatch quite a lot of ships, especially when you are top tier or mid tier. Again, the ability to do that with everything else the ship has going for it on a hull that can go 32 knots is crazy in my mind. So besides the main battery guns, you also have excellent secondary. She has the wonderful 128mm guns, which means that this is a Tier 7 battleship that can base pin 32mm with its secondaries, which means you don't care about anything that's at your tier or lower when it comes to your secondaries pinning them, because it will. And when you get up tier to Tier 9, you can pin those guys too. And another thing too is that a secondary build on the ship is still very viable, because they buff the secondary range out to, once you build into it, I think you can get it out to like 9.5 or 9.2 kilometers at Tier 7. Which is wonderful, because before you were stuck at 8 kilometers, so now you get a buff to your secondary range to where you don't have to get as close anymore. And again, your secondaries are going to pin whatever it is that you're seeing. And she gets torpedoes on top of that. Now, the way I suggest you do play the Gneisenau is put a main battery tank build on it and play it like a super large cruiser, or basically a Siegfried. If you play it like that, this ship will do you well. She's a wonderful ship now, so comfortable to play, and she still has pretty decent AA. She used to have amazing AA back in the day. Those 128s are dual purpose, and that's, again, like God tier at Tier 7. But today, of course, is not as good as it used to be, but she still is a pretty decent AA boat to date, surprisingly. I know a German battleship with a good AA. What is the world coming to? So, yes, an excellent ship, well worth the grind. It's a tech line ship, free ship as well. So, a wonderful little ship here. Moving on to number 4, we have the Tier 7 British battleship, the Duke of York. So, the Duke of York is very interesting. She is considered by many to be one of the worst premiums in the game because she has a slower fire rate than her Tier 7 tech line counterpart, the King George V. But there's a couple of tricks up the Duke of York's sleeve. The main one being she gets improved AP pin angles with British AP, which is quite good for making cruisers just cease to exist on these 14-inch shells, which again have British BBAP with a short fuse. So what winds up happening is, unlike the King George, where when cruisers don't have to angle as steeply to your armor since it is only 14-inch guns at Tier 7, they have to with the Duke of York, otherwise they're going to get snapped out of existence with the improved AP pin angles, which is amazing. That also means that this ship's AP is great for dealing with superstructures of other battleships, the extremities, the bows, and the sterns. Even when they're pretty steeply angled to you with the improved AP pin angles, it's still going to pin that bow, and since it's short fuse AP, it's going to penetrate and detonate inside the armor, doing quite a nice amount of damage to the ship. On top of that, too, it still has British BBHE. It does have, again, a 2-second longer reload than the King George, so she's not quite as good as an HE spammer, but it's still British BBHE. You're not going to have problems starting fires and doing amazing HE alpha on whatever it is that you're shooting at. So, yeah. Now, she is a King George, so that does mean that despite being one of the most well-armored ships of the war, she is stuck at Tier 7, doesn't have a 32mm bow, so you can get up tier to Tier 9, and they can overmatch you quite easily at that tier, since a Tier 9 battleship has 16-inch and above guns, but you still have the HE to fall back on, so when you do get up-tiered, just load HE, burn them down, enjoy getting the economy buff from doing damage to a ship that's 2 tiers higher than you with, again, British BBHE. So she's an excellent premium for credit farming. She's, like, in my opinion, one of the best Tier 7 battleships in the game. I'm not sure where all the hate comes from. I guess it's just from the players who just see the 2-second longer reload time and they just want to spam HE in their battleship, which I remember back when you got dogged on for using HE in a battleship beforehand, but an excellent battleship. This is a coal ship as well, so you can get this ship completely for free. It's a Tier 7 coal ship too, so it's not going to take you 3 months to get the coal like you need to get a Tier 9 premium. Now, would this be one of the first coal ships I'd say pick up? No, probably not. But definitely, once you get like that Kearsarge and that Napoli and maybe 1 or 2 others, this would be one I would highly recommend you guys pick up. Or it is a Tier 7, and she is, I believe, available for sale in the Armory for cash as well. So you can pick her up for around $30-ish, but I would encourage you guys to get it for free. Also, pretty darn good British Battleship Commander Trainer, because you're still going to be putting that tank build on your commander anyway. So an excellent ship for that as well. Alright, moving down to number 3, we have the Tier 9 American battleship, the Iowa. So, the Iowa, one of the oldest battleships in the game, one of the 2 original, well, part of one of the 2 original battleship tech lines that the game launched with. So, she's quite old, especially by, again, this game's literally as old as the game. It's the 7th anniversary of World Warships, it's the 7th anniversary of Iowa being in the game. But boy, has she aged well with the help of a couple of buffs from the dev team. So, the Iowa has 9 16-inch guns. She is a very fast battleship as well. If you have the speed flag equipped on the Iowa, you can get her up to over 34 knots, which used to be the fastest battleship in the game, and she held that title for some time, but yeah, that's kind of gone now. But anyway, we have a fast maneuverable battleship. She is pretty big though, so she does take a second to turn. Very long battleship. I have the pleasure of seeing the Minnesota in real life, and I was like a medium-sized battleship in game compared to some of the battleships we have, but in real life, man, these ships are absolutely massive. But anyway, back to the game. So she has the 16-inch American AP shells, which is the improved American AP, that's super heavy AP, which means that even though the ship does have 16-inch guns, they hit well above a 16-inch shell's weight class. Thanks to that, again, that lovely American super heavy AP. Now, her shells are also quite slow because they're super heavy. She's not quite as slow as the North Carolina, which has a 45 caliber gun. The Iowa has a 50 caliber gun, and with that longer barrel, the shells do travel a little bit faster, but they're still slow by Tier 9 battleship gun velocity standards. However, that does mean that unlike in a lot of other cases when you have fast shells, like for example the Italian 15-inch shells, those are some very fast shells, and you overpin a cruiser, you get very frustrated by that. With the Iowa, though, because of the slower velocity, you're going to more often than not actually penetrate that cruiser, and then you're delivering those super heavy shells which have a very nice AP alpha to that cruiser and simply deleting him. That also means when you're fighting other battleships, again, you have 16-inch shells that punch way harder than they should. So if you catch a broadside ship like I'm doing to this GK either shortly before this section or right now, you're gonna be chugging for like 20 or 30k if they give you the broadside of their ship, if they make that mistake. And of course too, you'll be citadeling them even if it's not a German battleship quite well. Now, in addition to that AP, the Iowa has gotten two big buffs in her life. The first one was that they lowered her citadel to below the waterline. The second one is that they gave her the improved American battleship Hill. A couple of years ago, they gave Colorado already have it. From Tier 8 on up, they gave the American battleships an improved Hill since they are a very old class in the game. Their armor scheme isn't the tankiest, and they've added in all these crazy HE spammers. So many more large caliber battleships at Tier 8 up. There's so many 457 millimeter guns now at higher tiers. So they gave the American battleships an improved Hill. It's not like the Conqueror Super Hill. It's kind of like a Warspite Hill on steroids, if you will, which I'm sure you'll see me use a couple of times in this match. So now with that improved Hill, you can stay in the match far longer than you probably should. I definitely lived way longer than I would have with the original American battleship Hill in this match. If you want to see the original American battleship Hill, go check out one of my videos on Missouri. You'll see how tiny that hill is in comparison. So now you have a fast battleship with hard-hitting 16-inch guns that can easily outflank an enemy team, get on their side, deliver some of that super heavy AP to their sides, and still be able to endure the match. An excellent ship. Definitely the line I would recommend new players to go up. With that improved Hill, you have a lot of forgiveness if you slip up. But still, if you do slip up, these ships, even though their citadels are below the waterline from long ranges, or if you're turning hard over, they're not hard to citadel, so you got to watch out for that. But an excellent ship, a good historical ship too as well, and a free ship because this is a Tier 9 tech line ship. Alright, moving on down to number 2, we have the Tier 9 French battleship, the Alsace. So the Alsace is, well, probably what the Republic should have been, but with either some more guns or some larger guns. But then we got the Republic, which is a super speed. But the Alsace is a fantastic ship. She's a very fast battleship. She does get the French battleship speed boost. You get 12 15-inch guns with French AP, like I was talking about with the Iowa. This is one of the ships that have the hypervelocity guns on their battleship. She has some amazingly fast AP. And since it's so fast, it penetrates very, very, very well. Too well in many cases when dealing with cruisers, but against other battleships, you will absolutely be chunking the living crap out of them. Now, when it does come to cruisers, since you do have 12 guns, you do, even if you overpin them, deliver quite a large amount of damage to them because you do have 12 guns. And sure, if you overpin them, you're doing like, I think it's like, 1,200 damage, but you have 12 guns. And, they're not all going to hit, but even 8 or 9 of those shells overpinning, they're still doing like 10,000 damage to cruisers. And when they do try to angle to you with the hypervelocity guns, they will eventually pin if they're angled, because angling increases the effective thickness of the armor, finally gives the AP something to bite into, and then boy, does it delete cruisers in that case. So it's another fast battleship with hard-hitting guns, They can easily get on the flank of the enemy team. She has decent AA. She does have a lot of secondary guns, if you can't tell by the mountain of secondary guns sitting on her midships. And those are dual purpose as well, so when they're intact, they do a pretty good job. But for some reason, the French forgot to armor their secondary guns, so 1 or 2 HE salvos from something like a Conqueror, and you will lose most of your secondaries and most of your AA, which is very sad, and which is also why I don't recommend a secondary build on an Alsace, because that happens a lot. But with, again, a main battery tank build, this is a very, very fun ship to play. With the dispersion module, it does keep the dispersion on the Alsace just enough in check to keep it from being super frustrating. But again, you still do get the wonky salvo every now and then with this ship. But her armor scheme's great. She has a turtleback armor. She's very hard to citadel. A very good ship for getting in close to the enemy team with, again, those wonderful 15-inch French AP guns. And another Tier 9 tech line ship here too. So this is another free ship that is, again, just a complete blast to play. Alright, moving on down to number 1. We have the Tier 10 American battleship, the Ohio. The Ohio is one of the best additions to the American branch in ever. What the Ohio is a Montana, but rather than have 12 16-inch guns, she has 8 18-inch guns, 8 457mm American guns with the American battleship AP, that super heavy AP, which means these guns hurt like hell when they connect. Now, something I forgot to mention with the Iowa that the Ohio can, and I would definitely recommend make use of, is the improved Artillery Plotting Room Mod 2, which decreases your dispersion by 11%, rather than like the dispersion module, which you can fit in, I believe, the 3rd slot, which only decreases your dispersion by 7%. This module decreases it by 11, which means for the Iowa with 9 16-inch guns, you get some very nice salvos out of the guns. On occasion, you still get some wonky salvos, but much better than your other Tier 9 battleship counterparts. On the Ohio with her 8 18-inch guns, it saves the Ohio from suffering from what seems to be dual gun syndrome. A lot of times when you have battleships with just 2 turrets, 2 guns and 1 turret, they have pretty wonky dispersion. Like even the Bismarck with the improved dispersion ellipse still gets this from time to time. But with the module fitted here, it keeps that from happening. So that means you have 8 18-inch guns that more often than not connect to their target with American Super Heavy AP, which again hurts like hell. In addition to that too, the Ohio does get the improved American Battleship Hill, and she does get the quick cooldown time on her damage con as well. And is the American Battleship damage con, something else I forgot to mention with the Iowa, that does run for 21 seconds, which means for those 21 seconds, no fires or floodings can get started on your ship, so that helps their survivability when they're in a pinch. In addition to that, she does have Massachusetts secondaries, which means that that mountain of 5-inch guns on either side of the ship is quite usable. You can get them out to 11.3 kilometers, and they do have a very fast fire rate when you build into them. Now, they won't be pinning 32 millimeters of armor unless you take IFHE, which I don't think is really necessary with the Ohio, because of the amount of secondaries you have, and with the volume of secondaries that you have and the reload time that you have with them, you'll be setting a lot of fires. A lot of fires with these secondaries. Now, they're not as accurate as they used to be from before the Commander rework. Before the Commander rework, these secondaries are like laser pointers, and you would melt down DDs, have battleships set ablaze in just a few seconds. They're not that good anymore, but they're still pretty darn good. To where you can build into them in randoms, and they'll be perfectly viable. But a real godly build on the Ohio is the tank build, because this is a really tanky battleship with that improved American BB Hill and that American BB damage con. So when you build into that, this ship becomes incredibly tough to kill, which is why you see the ship so much in COTS and in clan battles for the Tier 10 seasons. You get that awesome American 18-inch AP, you get the improved American damage con with the improved cooldown time and the improved American battleship Hill, and it's still a Montana hull. A Montana hull doesn't have, an icebreaker bow or anything, but the Citadel is below the waterline, has a large amount of hit points for a Tier 10 ship, and it still is, you know, it has a 32mm bow, 32mm stern with the improved damage con and heal. It's an incredibly tanky ship. So you have a ship here that is a fun random battleship. You can build with the main battery or the secondaries, or kind of an in-between build like I have on here. I have everything to secondaries except for the last module. I have the improved dispersion module, the artillery plotting room mod 2 module equipped in that last slot, to where I have good secondaries and I still have a very accurate main battery gun. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. That's what I would recommend you put on your Ohio for a random battles ship. But for competitive, yeah, definitely dump everything into tank, and you've got, again, a godly ship here when it comes to tanking. Now, the only downside to the Ohio, stats-wise, is her speed. She only goes 28 knots, so she is a bit slower, and that does make it a bit difficult to brawl at times. But if you play the ship right, you pay attention to the map, you can easily see where you need to go to get into the action, and once you get into the action, she's wonderful. The other downside, it's not stats, is that this is a Research Bureau ship. So you got to regrind lines in order to get this ship. If you wait for the right time, when we have the double research points boost, you can get away with only regrinding 5 lines. But if you miss that, it's going to be 6 or 7-ish. And granted, with the amount of Research Bureau points they kind of just hand out for free now, if you've been playing this game for a couple of years, you're probably already like a third of the way there. But if you want to get this ship, you got to go to the Research Bureau. What I would recommend is, if you have the Frugamo line, reset that line. That's the shortest line when it comes to regrinding, and just run through those ships 4 or 5 times, get your Research Bureau points, get your Ohio. An excellent ship here, one of the best premiums in the game, and in my opinion, the current best battleship in the game. Alright guys, so that's my list. Again, I tried to include a bit of a variety here. I just didn't want to go through a list of tier 10 ships. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Again, if there's a battleship on this list, that doesn't mean it's not terrible. Like the Yamato. I mean, the Yamato is one of my favorite ships, but again, it would have been a list of tier 10s if I would have gone through like that. So I wanted to throw in a bit of a mix here. I could probably do like a top 15 list of these battleships. There's so many good ones in the game today, but this is a good balance of fun ships, competitive ships, good commander trainers, good credit farmers, in my opinion. So guys, hope you guys have a wonderful Monday, have a wonderful week. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 40,000 subscribers. We're very close to that goal, and we'll be doing another giveaway when we get there, so make sure you subscribe and stick around for that. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Monday, have a wonderful week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.